Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast and subscribing. Make sure you share it with your friends if you love it. And also, who do you think I should try to get on next? Message me at Jeff Groovy on Facebook or Instagram. Hey everyone, today's episode is brought to you by Vivo Life. Now we all know how important protein is to maintain an optimal diet. And me, I'm a busy dad of two little kids, and as much as I want to get all of my nutrients from whole foods, sometimes I just can't manage to make that happen. And I absolutely need the best quality foods so I can recover from my workouts and sustain my energy so I can show up and be the dad that I want to be. And that's why over the years, I was on a quest to find the healthiest and cleanest protein powder that I can use after my workouts. So what I do is I mix a scoop of Vivo Life Perform in with my post-workout recovery meal, which is oatmeal, blueberries, flaxseed, and it tastes amazing. I love it. So not only does Vivo meet the criteria I need, it also is environmentally friendly as well. It's 100% plant-based protein, and the flavor is extremely smooth compared to other protein powders I've tried out there. Part of the reason is they use fermented protein, which is the healthiest protein that you can have for your digestive system, especially mine. On top of that, it has amazing ingredients like turmeric, ginger, and reishi mushrooms. What's so freaking awesome is that Vivo Life stands behind their product, and if you don't feel the difference in 30 days, they give you a full refund, no questions asked. So I get it. We're all unique. We're all different. We have different preferences. You be the judge yourself. Go to vivolife.com, and at the checkout, use the coupon code PERFECT10 for 10% off your first order. And by the way, my favorite flavor is the banana and cinnamon. It's about growing as a person. Your best is completely unique to you. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me on episode 17 of Fuck Perfect. I'm here with none other than Stephen Shedletsky. He's works with the Simon Sinek Incorporation. He's head of brand experience and Igniter. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Stephen.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's super big honor of mine. And for people that maybe don't know maybe about you and how you got started, and also about Simon Sinek, can you talk about that, like maybe a cherry-picked version of maybe your story and how you got to where you are today?
Pain. So, yeah, and I mean, we were speaking earlier, Jeff, and you said something which sort of gave me a spark or an insight, which is oftentimes our purpose or our why lives in what are the things that we've struggled with and that we've either overcome or are overcoming. And then if we can help others overcome those same things, that's where our purpose lives. And so for me, I started my career at a large organization in a quote leadership development program. I just forgot to ask them how they define the term leadership. Turns out there isn't a standard definition. Theirs was more around profit and loss and authority. And are you white, male, and have gray hair? And mine was about humanity and service, living in service and taking care of those in your span of care. So about 5 months into that first job out of school, I felt completely disengaged, unmotivated, unfulfilled. At first, I made myself wrong for that. What's wrong with me? Why am I not motivated versus what perhaps isn't right in this environment? And I was introduced to Simon's work. This would have been in 2010. His TED Talk was out for about a year. His initial TED Talk, How Great Leaders Inspire Action, which is all about the golden circle. Everyone knows what they do. Most people know how they do it different or better than others. But very few people can put into clear language why they do what they do. And every single inspiring individual or organization thinks, acts, and communicates from the inside out. They're clear on their why, they're disciplined in their hows, and consistent with what they do. That's what it means to be authentic. You say and do the things you actually believe, even when it's hard and inconvenient. And so I totally got lucky. I went to hear an author I admire, Malcolm Gladwell, speak at a conference, and just before him was Simon Sinek. And I was already a Simon fan, drawing circles on napkins and explaining it to anyone who would listen. And just right time, right place. I wrote him a LinkedIn message saying that I loved his talk and was looking forward to reading his book. He responded to that LinkedIn message. I now lead the team that responds to those LinkedIn messages. Um, and
That's
yeah, I mean,
cool.
I'd be doing this work with or without him, and I feel very fortunate that it gets to be with him.
That's amazing, and I love that. It's kind of like it was just almost by happenstance, like one thing like kind of led to the other, and there are opportunities that you can like cease, kind of jump on, and then you
Mhm.
could have easily let it go by too, right? You could have easily just sat in there and never even messaged him at all.
Yeah, sure. Well, and I think I wasn't you know I was both messaging him for me and for him and for others. Like, was it selfish? Yeah, but was it also service oriented? Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And after we had that initial exchange, I wrote him um, a longer message or email some months later. And actually, not that long after, about a month or two after I'd read the book. I listened and watched every podcast interview or video I could get my hands on, and then I sent him what I call, it's like a 5 paragraph, a 5 point email, which I think is a great way to connect with people who
Yeah.
inspire you. I wrote to him and I said, "Hey, here's how we know each other," so he can make a connection as to how we know each other or what a mutual connection is. I said, "Here's why you inspire me. If you get that right, and they aren't a phony, they'll keep reading." I then said, "Here's because of said inspiration. Here's what I'm inspired to do because of it."
Hmm.
Right now, I'm saying I want to build on and add to the movement you're helping to lead. Here's how I think you can help me. Can I buy you a coffee? Um, and that message elicited more of a response, and then I got to meet up with him in New York a few months later, and I went on the MS walk with him and his family. And long story short, I've been on the team for close to 10 years.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And so I'm wondering, maybe this kind of like is a good way to bridge into this. Is in your life, was there a time that you sought perfection, or at least like these high expectations that you had of yourself,
Hmm.
where if you didn't meet them, that was the perfection, and you were getting so much pain out of it, and then all of a sudden you
Yeah.
switched to progress,
Oh, cool.
and it was like, oh hey, I'm not really focused on hitting these exact things every time, but now it's so much better.
Hmm. Two distinct times come up for me, Jeff. One was I grew up with a stutter, and I still have one. I've just learned how to work with it. There are certain words, typically at the front of words, that I struggle with, and I'll either speak through them slowly or just choose a different word. And oddly enough, I married a speech therapist. Um, or maybe not so oddly enough. Um, so I remember I was in grade 6. I was in French class because I'm Canadian, and the word très came up. I was reading aloud in front of the entire class. We were zigzagging through the class and taking turns, and I couldn't say the word très. And I knew at that point I had a problem and I needed to get help. And I went to group coaching on overcoming a stutter. And fortunately for me, my stutter wasn't that bad. It was more I needed some tools and tactics, and it was more just confidence building for me. But I remember particularly, um, between the grades 2 and 6, when I knew I had a problem but didn't do much about it.
Hmm.
Um, I was so tentative because if I spoke, I only wanted to speak publicly, in groups of friends, one on one, or even in front of a class or something, knowing that I would do okay or do it right. So I was this very outgoing kid, but I was reserved for fear that if I spoke and stuttered, I would fail or I would be imperfect.
What,
Um,
if you don't mind me asking, what led you? You
mm,
said from grade 2 to 6. What made you? What was the deciding factor or the last straw that kind of made you seek out the
sure.
help with the stutter?
Yeah. So in grade 2, my parents became aware of it, and so we went to a couple therapists and were given some strategies that weren't effective.
Hmm.
Um, uh, the the one that we employed, based on recommendation, was to hold a clicker, and anytime I would stutter, I'd click, which is actually paying attention to the negative behavior. They were
Right.
wanting to see that my stutters would decline or that I would increase my awareness, but it's counting the negative behavior. So it actually wasn't helpful. It lasted for maybe half a day. Not to mention the kids who would say, "What the heck are you holding?" So that lasted half a day,
Well,
and
it's
then it
interesting
wasn't.
too because
Yeah.
when you hear about training dogs, they say if you want the behavior to keep continuing, you use a clicker,
Hmm.
right? So it's like it's the
Yep.
exact opposite, right?
Yeah. So that strategy didn't work, and then it wasn't that bad. It wasn't until grade 6 where I literally couldn't say quite possibly the third word you learn in French, and I had to say to my teacher and in front of the whole class, "I can't pronounce the word." And she said, "Très, you can't pronounce the word très," and she skipped my turn and went to the next person. And I felt embarrassed, ashamed, and I knew I had a problem and I needed to take care of it. Otherwise, it would control me. I just
Mm,
knew it. Um, and then the other time is like, how often do people get hired into jobs but still feel like they need to prove that the people who hired them made the right choice? It's like they
mhm,
hired you. Like you don't need to prove to them. And so there were a few periods of times when I joined this team with Simon, particularly whenever he was in the room, I would just show up like an ass. Like I would just try to prove that they made the right choice, prove that I was worth taking a risk on, prove that I deserved to go and speak and represent
mhm.
the brand. And I love that you use the word progress. That as soon as I um, made the choice just to show up and serve and no longer chase a role, but do the role that I was handed at that moment, which was customer service and fan emails. Just do that and control whatever I could control and just contribute. And when I made that shift, instead of there's a difference between trying to climb up yourself
Mhm.
and people knock you down versus versus creating the conditions in which people want to lift you up. And when I just decided to make progress and improve and contribute in the sphere that I had control over, people around me on our team lifted me up because they trusted me.
It's interesting. I couldn't help but think about the idea of praise and judgment, right? Or I guess negative praise. So the the idea is where when people like the book was like the Four Agreements, right?
Hmm.
That kind of book where it talks about how you if you value praise, I mean the only way to get rid of kind of be bulletproof in a way of the negative judgments and the criticism and the toxicity and that stuff is to also not value the praise part, to be almost like that self, like you love yourself enough
Mm,
where you don't need the praise or the negativity because they're both the same thing. They're
yeah,
You're expecting a reaction out of other people's perception, like you want them
yeah,
to either like you as opposed to not like you.
yeah. I mean,
uh,
yeah, yeah. Keep going. I have a thought
it's
on this, but keep going.
so I was wondering, I was thinking about this where in the past, I mean, I'm so out of my my element right now, but
That's
maybe
fine.
it's like I was just thinking like kind of focusing on speech uh, and 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 maybe other things of not feeling like always hearing criticism. Maybe the flip side was like, okay, I don't want to hear that criticism. So if I get them in a state of praise, I won't hear the flip side. Um, and I know I'm guilty of this too. You always try to kind of suck up to the people you idol, but hey, maybe they can actually you kind of make sure that they see you in this way
Mm,
in a certain way because you value this relationship, and it can come off different because like in the Four Agreements book they say if someone calls you an alien you're like I don't doesn't mean anything. If
hmm.
someone's like hey, you know, you could lose a few pounds, like well maybe I could, and then you start to buy into that, and
Yeah,
that's when you get irritated. So I was just curious about that for you for seeking praise over the judgment.
yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, my Achilles heel is I like to be liked. I don't think I'm the only one. And I appreciate approval, and I mean, there are a couple things that I try to do, and then a couple things that or one thing that jumps out that Simon's actually taught me. Um, I mean, so actually, I'll start with the other one first. If somebody has a problem with you and you deeply respect them, that's your problem.
Hmm.
And if someone has a problem with you, and maybe respect isn't the right word, but you don't necessarily value their opinion, not your problem, it's theirs.
Hmm.
And you're still allowed to treat them with empathy and respect, But, you know, when I receive praise from someone that I deeply respect and admire, I appreciate it. And sometimes I'll often ask them to tell me more because I want to repeat it. Like if someone says, "Oh, that was such a great XYZ," I'm like, at risk of being a little bit egotistical, can you tell me more so that I can actually take that to improve? And then similarly with critique, that if someone has feedback for me in
Hmm.
something I've done or the way I've showed up or whatever it might be, that's an opportunity for improvement as well. And I think you can improve both from praise and affirmation as well as from critical feedback. Um, and I believe deeply in a formula of feedback, positive or constructive. FBI. What's the feeling, what's the
Hmm.
behavior, and what's the impact? So when you did this behavior, it made me feel X, and the impact is, when you showed up late 3 times to meetings this week, my feeling is frustration that you don't value my time, and I'm less likely to put you on important client work.
Gotcha. Yeah,
you
that
know
I love that, the FBI. Jeez, that makes so much sense. You kind of, um, well, a lot of people stop short. They might even go not even go to the F. They'll just say, "Hey, you did this,"
mhm mhm
as opposed to like,
yeah.
"This is how I feel."
Yeah,
Right.
or stop being such a jerk. Well, what can I do with that? It's laden with
Right.
judgment
Right.
versus taking accountability for your own feelings. And leaders own their impact, whether it's intended or unintended.
Hmm.
If I have an unintended impact, I think very few times we walk around this world intending to frustrate people, but we do.
Yeah.
And I think the leaders among us are the ones who say, I know I'm not perfect. I have lots of room to improve, and the greatest way for me to improve is to receive feedback from you. So when you feel like I don't trust you, or you feel like I'm overconfident, or whatever it might be, I need you to tell me, because it's not my intention, but it may be my impact.
Absolutely. And you know, I can't help but think too. Uh, I was an elementary school teacher for 6.5, 7 years, and I I love the idea is like if sometimes people would say, "Oh, hey, the student is having this issue," and ultimately, if the school or the parents get defensive, I was thinking it doesn't matter. The kid's still having the issue, right? We can figure out how to get the kid the result that maybe we want. It's best for the kid, best for the student. Don't really focus on like maybe whose fault it is. Let's just focus on the result because no matter whose fault it is, we still have the problem. The problem is still
hmm
there, right? Let's
hmm
work on that. And I focused a lot on, and it's really interesting because as going from an an actor in training basically, and then being like, okay, if I'm going to graduate with this degree, I might want to consider actually the person next to me. I'll give a really detailed version of the story. I was in oceanography, something I hated. I couldn't stand. Not that I hate the ocean, just did not like the class. I was looking at this person next to me, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this homework for theater education." On theater education, is that like, if, failed actors? Like you're kind of you're gonna go right into that. You're not gonna. Because I always thought if you teach, you failed at what you did, and that was my limiting belief at the time.
hmm
I was like, okay, I'm going to look into this. So I looked into getting theater education degree, and kind of got into teaching. And my whole thing was, all right, now that I'm in the classroom doing my student teaching, they talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation in the book, and I'm teaching these high schoolers, and they're not motivated to do some of the activities. I'm like, oh, I'll just do intrinsic or extrinsic motivation. That's what the book said, and I do it, and it's like nothing. Well,
mm
that didn't work, and that's what led me to really believe, like, okay, there's like this textbook, and then there's the actual connection I have with the kids. When I kind of dropped almost everything I had from the textbook, is like, how can I connect and land my words and my message with these kids? By the end of I only had what, 4 months. By the end of the 4 months, I had everyone standing up singing musicals, even though none of them actually could sing well. It's just the idea of what does singing give you. So when I went to teach in California, they said, oh, that was in Arizona. When I went back to California, they said, oh, we don't honor theater certifications for teaching. You have to have an English degree.
hmm
So it led me down this path of like, well, I guess I'll be an elementary school teacher at this private school, even though I didn't want to teach younger kids. And all of a sudden, the motivation part was a little bit gone. is like, oh, we're just here. We're excited to be at school. Yay. I'm like, this is kind of cool. But I really focused on, and by the way, like doing reading the Find Your Why kind of book let me have these answers looking back, because I didn't really know them when I was in them. But I made sure that the kids always felt safe and respected and valued when they came in the door day one. First grader, third grader, fifth grader, doesn't matter what grade they were in. They knew something I didn't know.
Mm,
They already had 100%. It wasn't going to give them a zero for starting out at nothing.
mhm,
And whenever, it doesn't matter if I was talking or they're talking, everyone's making sure everyone's safe and respected, valued. And my theater background came into play when it came to attention. How can I get these kids? Because if I can get their attention, my odds of them teaching them something is quite high. Yeah, right.
mhm,
And so with keeping kind of like I wouldn't even start the day off with lesson plans and stuff, all the stuff that you're supposed to do, which is kind of connected to your point earlier. But the I would start the days, hey, how's everyone's weekend? I'd connect with them, just kind of go around the room, see how everyone's feeling, doing, and then move in the teaching. And I wouldn't always get through everything I was supposed to get through in the day. But what started happening was when I would do tests, and I was in this really elite school, and they said, "Hey, we want to make sure everyone gets these high test scores so that we can look better when we advertise to parents." But during the year where we're not doing the standardized tests, I let the kids use their notes and their friends and whatever they want in Google to find answers. So I was teaching them to use the resources we had to find answers as opposed to memorizing answers. Because, like you were talking about, I want to know when you're kind of hearing feedback. I want to know if half the class doesn't get something. I don't want you studying all night for a test, because I need to know where I'm not showing up. That's
mhm,
my job.
mhm.
If you don't let if I have these kids memorize all these answers, then I think everything's fine and dandy. So I'm like, no, don't really study. I want to see what you know. And then if I notice there's a weak area, I'm like, okay, I need to go back and do this again. Come standardized test time year after year, my classes were doing extremely well. Granted, during the standardized test time, I didn't let them do all the things we did, but I had created this constant like belief, like, oh, I can find the answer. Oh, I know the answer. Oh, I got, and like it almost took the anxiety or the stress, the performance level stress out.
Mhm.
So when the school comes in and say, hey, what are you doing? I was like, oh boy. And so at that point, they're like, well, you can't do that. I was like, but wasn't your goal the result that I'm getting? And they were more romantic and idealistic about how, as opposed to the result of the kids. And
Mhm,
eventually, that's the reason why we kind of parted ways. And I felt like I can't, in order to help people make these changes and kind of grow. I have these weird rules that are being applied from me top down, like that it doesn't fit the result that everyone wants. So, I mean, to that point, like I understand, like having that feedback really helps you understand. Oh, now I can either do this as a leader or not do that, right?
mhm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer in inputs over outputs, and if you get the inputs right, the outputs tend to take care of themselves.
Hmm.
Whereas when you focus on the output, you can get into some trouble. Like, for example, if you're coaching a kid's soccer team and you say you have to win, your kids will kick the other team in the shins,
Oh,
and do
sure.
things that are either against the rules or unethical, whatever it might be. Versus if you lose the game, but you praise the team for the things they do really well and say keep doing those, and you address the areas where you need to improve, and you focus on the inputs, the outputs tend to take care of themselves over time. This is improving, and this is the journey. Now, soccer may not be the greatest example to use, only because it's finite. Like there's a game and there's a season. But I think it applies to life and it applies to careers where there are no ends. Like there are fiscal years, but
Right.
there's no end. And so, yeah, I'm a huge believer on get the inputs right and the outputs tend to take care of themselves.
Well, isn't that kind of what you're talking about with how you met Simon Sinek? You were kind of taking care of your inputs, right?
Say more, maybe.
All
I'm
right. So
sure.
like you went to go see the speaker. You weren't really thinking, hey, I'm going to get a job out of this, right? You
Hmm.
weren't. you had no idea where your coffee with Simon Sinek was going to go. You had no idea where the thank you on LinkedIn was going to go. Um, but it was like you're kind of doing these things for yourself, and you're focusing on different aspects of it, which
Hmm.
led to this awesome output,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I asked Simon when he and I had our first conversation. I said, "Why did you say yes to this conversation?" And he said, "I got the sense that you're a giver." And I've
Mhm.
since read the book Give and Take by Adam Grant, which is fantastic.
Let me write that
Um,
down.
yeah, it's a fantastic book. It essentially talks about um, Grant builds upon one of Malcolm Gladwell's books called Outliers, which is why are these inordinately successful people inordinately successful?
Hmm.
And Gladwell breaks it down to talent. You have to have some talent. You don't need to be the most talented. You just need some hard work. Be willing to put in 10,000 hours. You know this concept of 10,000 hours, and then luck, like born at the right place at the right time. Bill Gates, born in
Oh,
Egypt
right.
300 years ago, different Bill Gates, right place, right time. Um, and Adam Grant goes, yes, yes, yes. And what's your reciprocity style? Are you a giver, a taker, or a matcher? And as it turns out, there are the least successful and the most successful people are both givers. There are two types of givers. There are givers who are martyrs and doormats who just give without any regard to their own goals, projects, or agendas. And it's fine to have an agenda so long as it's service based,
Hmm.
service oriented. Then there are givers who do set boundaries and do have an agenda. And I'm not willing to drop everything at the moment's notice that you ask for help because I have things that I need to take care of as well. I can say instead of helping you
Wow,
right now, I'll help you Thursday afternoon. Is that okay? If that's not okay, go ask Randy. He can help, you know?
that's really insightful. Givers with boundaries and givers without.
Hmm.
So I wonder if you rewrote the giving tree with boundaries.
Yeah, I'm not as I know my daughter has the book, but I
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just the tree keeps giving, giving, giving enough
and then
until
it's
it's a stump,
depleted.
right?
Right.
And you're like, oh my god, it's like really sad. Um, yeah,
Well,
that's
and
interesting.
I mean, there are so many times where I'll help somebody out and they'll say, "What can I do to reciprocate? Like, how can I pay you back?" Which is a very matcher. It's a matcher, right? If
Yeah, I
I
see
help
what you
you,
mean.
it's because I'm cashing it in. I'm helping you because I believe in you. And so my response is always the same, which is what Adam Grant recommends: is pay it forward. Like I've given to you because I believe in you. I'm not looking to cash this in. Maybe I'll need help at some point in the future. Maybe I won't, but just make sure that you help someone out, help somebody else out.
I have to probably bleep this out when I do the podcast. But um, a few years ago, I was at a really small gathering with John Maxwell, and we were going around the room saying like, what are some of the key things that you want that you value in a business? And I said, for my group, I said, I believe in giving without expectation.
Hmm.
He's like, that's a terrible business idea. Don't do that. And I
Hmm.
was like, whoa, like my world kind of shattered there because I was so confident in what I was saying at the time. But then hearing hearing him say that, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, but if I give with expectation, I love how you phrase it in terms of giving with boundaries and matching, and then possibly giving to be a martyr.
Hmm.
I get giving to be a martyr is not a good business model. That's and hopefully that's what he was getting at. But obviously, giving with expectations is the matching part,
Hmm.
and it also could be, you can give with boundaries, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think I'm trying to think in terms of business and giving. I mean, it. Listen, I'm not about giving products and value away for free all the time, but sometimes, like I'm speaking with a client right now, they want us to come in and do a session that is you know untraditional to the way we usually operate. Like
Hmm.
we're usually hired to come in and do a workshop. This is more consulting. We don't really have a consulting model yet, and it's the right thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. It's good for them, it's good for us, and though there's the what they would want to pay us wouldn't really work with our business model. So let's just do it because it's the right thing to do. And if things are right, it will lead to something a lot bigger. Like I used to do more one-on-one coaching. I don't really have the patience for it. It's not my jam. It's
Hmm.
hard to make a living that way, but I
Tell
still
me
will
about
coach.
it.
I'll still coach people, and I'll do it sometimes at a lower price or even for free because it's just the right thing to do. And I know that it builds loyalty, and when they need a speaker or a workshop, they're going to come running.
Right.
And if I can do it, great. And if not, I'll pass it over to someone who can. So I think generosity is a good business model. So, you need to know what your business model is, but sometimes it's just good to give to the people who will give to others.
Yeah. Awesome. And so maybe real quick, has there ever been a time in your life, in your health, where you focused on perfection or meeting certain criteria, and you're like, that's not working, and you went to progress? An easy example that comes up a lot with my clients is like people are focusing on like, so and so trainer said I got to eat 1,762 calories and I'm trying to hit
Hmm.
that. I'm like, oh my gosh, just take a breath,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
get within range.
Well, I mean, I sure. Um, I mean, listen, I have. I don't think your weight is everything, but your weight is an indicator. It's more important how you feel than
Hmm.
how much you weigh.
I
Um,
love that you said that.
but I mean, with Simon's new book, the Infinite Game, which is if you have two or more players, you have a game. There are finite games, there are infinite games, right? Finite game is like baseball, known players, agreed upon rules, except for the strike zone, and there's an end, right?
Hmm.
Baseball. Infinite games have known and unknown players. The rules can change. You can make them up as you go, and there's no end. The game keeps going. Players come and go. And so Simon's written this book on what are the practices that you need to maintain to operate in an infinite game with an infinite mindset. And make no mistake of it, there are infinite games all around us. Life is an infinite game, though we will die. Like our lives are finite, life is
Right.
infinite. Our careers are infinite. There's no winner of careers. Relationships are infinite, and health is infinite too. And you can have finite goals with your health. Like I'd like to see my weight at a certain level. I think I'll see
Hmm.
when I get there and how I feel. Maybe I'll say no, it needs to be higher, lower, whatever. Um, but it's like the practice of health. You need to eat smart and well. You need to sleep. You need to focus on your exercise. You need to focus on your relationships. Where do you start?
Right.
Yes, you should start. No, but which one do I do first? Uh-huh. Like you need to do all of them, and you need to do all of them forever,
Right.
right? And let's face it, when I reach my fitness goal, I can't just stop doing all the inputs that got me to that output. I got to keep
Absolutely.
going. And
Yeah.
let's face it, at 33, my context is different at 53. And
Hmm.
I'm going to have to change the things that I'm doing to reach health at that point. I'll give you another quick example.
I love
So
that.
I went for a run with Simon when my daughter was about. I have two kids. My daughter at that time, it was October 31st, 2017. So my daughter was a year and a bit. I've been eating too many of her chicken fingers. My weight was higher
Yeah.
than I
Yeah.
wanted it to be. I was going for a run with Simon, and I had kind of a big sort of moment of I gotta lose some pounds.
Hmm.
Hard for me to build an exercise just with full life and busy. I know it's important, but something I decided to do was I was going to do 3 sets of push-ups every day. I was going
Hmm.
to do push-ups in the morning, push-ups after lunch, and push-ups before I go to bed. And I was really good with it for a long time. Then I hurt my shoulder a little bit. I slowed down. And then all of a sudden, this goal of like 20 push-ups a night became, I don't know, I don't want to do 20. I'll just do none.
Hmm.
And then I had a shift, and I credit Simon again. I listened to an interview Simon did with on the Nike podcast, and he spoke about how he has a goal of doing one push-up every day, just one. And so
Hmm.
now my goal is one push-up, because when I go down, if I go down, if I do one, I'm not going to stop at
You were gonna do
one.
more, right?
And like the least I'll do are 4 or 5. and I'll go up to 22, 23, whatever it might be. And so I would avoid it because the perfection is I don't think I'm going to get to 20, so I just won't do any. But
Right. Isn't it
now,
interesting?
but now I just say my goal every day before bed, I want to do one push up, and I
Hmm.
haven't missed a day since I've changed my goal to one, and I've done way more than one. And I feel like $1,000,000 if I do 15 even.
Right, and it's so amazing how you can kind of almost change your expectation of 20 to like if I just do one, then you exceed it. Like, oh, I did more than I should have. This feels
Hmm.
then you kind of almost get in this different mental emotional state of happiness and gratitude and like and almost better self-talk and less of that inner critic, and you keep it up because you like it. And I was in the same boat. Like when I first started doing like kind of fitness and didn't really know what I was doing, I figured, oh, this is a 90-day thing. Before I get
Hmm.
married, I'm gonna make sure these pictures are pretty good. And then after I got married, I gained it all back, right? And then I lost it some more. And then I was talking to you before this call, how my mom, got stage 4 breast cancer, and I was like, oh, I gotta not only know what to do and help her and see how we can change food and nutrition and or just um, exercise, just trying to figure out what we can do. And so like going through these different variables are kind of painful experiences like you're talking about. I was focusing on perfection, like basically how do you not die. It's like it was a one and a zero, life or death. So it's like okay,
Hmm.
and it's like when we started to figure out like the progress part, okay, well if we can't be perfect, we're not going to get you know organic versus not organic. Yeah, organic's better. Don't have you shouldn't have the argument like, well, I'm just not going to buy it. Well, I mean, it is better. So it is sort of progress, right? Is it 100% perfect? No, right? So you kind of like work on these areas. And now when I'm helping people, it's like, okay, you are eating this food. Great. I don't really change what you're eating. Let's just add a few extra things. Can you just hit one vegetable a day? Can you hit one serving of beans or something like that? And they think, yeah, I can do this. And that whole mindset of like, I can do this and it's not bad, it's not painful. Because when we do these diets, most people do January 1st, resolutioners, fitness, nutrition, they change too much. They're in too much pain. They're not going to sustain it. And yeah, maybe they kick ass for 3 months and then they gain it all back. And I remember my daughter was right when my mom hit remission. My daughter, we found out she was born with a rare immune system disease where she couldn't be around any bacteria. Um, and that as being a dad, all the stress and weight and lack of sleep, like I started packing on the weight a ton, and we had to live in a bubble, a literal bubble, like no friends, no family, no parks, no playgrounds, nothing. And so, it'd break my heart when I hear her say, oh, these are my friends. And she's talking, talking about her little toys. Um, and eventually, like when my son was born, we were kind of wondering if we could take him to go visit family. We decided to take my daughter to get a second opinion in Boston, like Boston Children's Hospital, and they said, yeah, we did these tests, but hey, we know from the other tests that she can outgrow this because it was like 50-50 you can outgrow it or not. We weren't told that before, so it's like you're in a place of anger, but then also gratitude, which is a real like back and forth, which is really weird.
Hmm.
They're like, oh my god, now I can be a normal parent. What does that mean? And even though it was bad and those circumstances were bad about my mom having cancer and my daughter having this issue, it led me to grow down a path I wouldn't have gone before. Um, and at the same time, like, we got that news from my daughter, which was so awesome. My mom, how do I do this? Said she had a few months left to live, and it was like right then. And so it's just weird when you have like no time. She had no time left, just how much things just change, like what your focus is on. And it just really helped me. That's why this podcast even exists, is the idea that I can keep helping other people, even though she's not around to help.
Hmm.
And so I wouldn't know that I was. That's why I am doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for this book. I'm just like, why am I helping people with health and fitness? I don't know. And so it's really a cool way to kind of almost come back full circle to be able to talk to you and having you here. But thank you so much for being on the podcast. But before you go, if you want to just kind of let me know what's next for you, what do you got going on?
Sure, lots of stuff. I mean, right now with COVID-19, whenever you listen to this, it's now
Hmm.
the 13th of March, so 2020. So COVID-19 is very much top of heart and mind for us. You know, a big part of our the way we operate is to get in front of people,
Hmm.
and right now we need to pause that, and it could be for a few weeks, could be for longer. Um, but we're approaching that with an infinite mindset. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age where we can do this and
Absolutely.
connect and share ideas without spreading germs across the cloud, which is important right now. And so we're really looking to how can we connect with people virtually. And I think um, the most important thing to do in times like this and in all times is as individuals, we're junk, but together we're quite remarkable. And all we
Hmm.
have is each other. That's it. And so everything we do is to create a more inspired, safe, and fulfilled world. And that has everything to do with human connection. And so, how do we keep human connection alive when we need to distance ourselves for the spread of germs? But how can we still support each other? Because we, you know, not only are we dealing with a pandemic, but we're dealing with other issues around loneliness in the world right now. And we need to
Right.
we need to encourage people to foster relationships because all we have is each other.
It's really really interesting you say that because I've been saying for the last maybe 6 months, my observation has been that we've never been more connected than we are today without the weight of connection.
Hmm. Yeah, it's shallow connection rather
Yeah.
than
And depth.
intimacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which I mean, we are connected, but we're not connecting. And internet is great. It allows us to access a ton of information, speed transactions, and you and I
Hmm.
can have a conversation where I'm in Toronto and you're in Austin. Cool.
Right.
But this is not how relationships are built.
Right.
Relationships take time and consistency and intensity.
Right.
And we need to build relationships. Online is fine for it to start, and it needs to happen in person too, so long as we're being safe.
Yeah. So, I mean, circling back, you and Simon Sinek started online, and then
Yeah,
you bridged it over coffee, right? So,
yeah,
well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today, Stephen. It was an
yeah.
absolute
Likewise.
pleasure.
Thank you for creating this to honor your mom, and thank you for creating this to serve others. And a pleasure to join you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.